I got into engineering from what happened at O levels when I was doing O levels at St. George's College. In doing O levels at St. George's College, I was involved in, at that time we used to call it technical drawing, and I was always amazed at how the Roman aqueducts and so were constructed, and how the Roman roads were constructed in that particular period. And that is what fascinated me in the first case. My parents and my uncles and so were all into teaching and into law, and I didn't want to go into teaching or law, so I chose engineering. That's what started. At that, the interesting aspect about all of that is that when I was at St. George's College, I did not do art maths, I did not do physics, nor did I do chemistry. And I was following my sister, who didn't do art maths also, but she was very much interested in mathematics. And she got into Bishops, and then she had to be taught mathematics at Queen's Royal College. My father used to teach at Queen's Royal College, so all that was arranged. And she was the first person who got a girls' scholar in mathematics as such. So I followed that. She blazed the trail. I followed that. Went to Queen's Royal College. Went and did physics and pure and applied mathematics. That is what it was called at that time, right? After the first year, I did the London exams by myself, and I got the what I will call the pure and applied at O level. I got my physics at O level. No, I got my applied at A level, and I got my physics at O level. And then in the Cambridge, I completed all the exams as we normally did, and therefore I got the qualifications. I didn't have chemistry, but I was allowed to enter the University of the West Indies without chemistry on provision that I did chemistry before the exams, before I did my first year exams. And that ran me into trouble because I forgot about it. And I had to do all my chemistry in 1 month, right? Which I did, okay? Just before the exams as such. That is what happened there. That's how I got involved in engineering. The first place I worked was in the Works and Hydraulics division of the Ministry of Works, under the then director Colin Taylor. Okay. The other engineers I met there, the one that I considered most important it will come back to me. Anyway, I met those engineers there who were quite experienced. I found there that when I found there in engineering, that this whole idea of separation of disciplines into structure, hydraulics, and all these areas, that don't exist, right? You came out there with training in surveying. You came out there with training in structures. You came out there with training in hydraulics, and you had to do everything, right? That is, you had to design culverts. You had to go and do survey work before, right? Pick up the survey information, get your designs done. First again, in the Ministry of Works at that time, I wouldn't say that we had people there who were mentors as such. There was one person that I considered to be a mentor, and that was he's a person I'm trying to remember. He died already. That's the point. But he went eventually and was in charge of the water resources section of Water and Sewage Authority, right? But he is the one I will consider to be, and I've considered to be a mentor at that particular point in time, right? Other than that, you did everything on your own. You pick up your books, you read, you follow, you listen to the fellows who were there before in terms of particularly the foremen. I was involved mainly in the construction section of that. I did some designs at that time, but mainly involved in the construction section. What you did have is a lot of people who were people who go through the ministry by doing their work, right? They were not necessarily qualified engineers, but they grew through the ministry by doing their work, and you learn from them. Okay, that is what happened, right? So those are the experiences that I've had. Now, there were several challenges in the hydraulics department, Works and Hydraulics department, because you had flooding, right? You were in charge also of the sea defense works, right? So those are the areas in which you concentrated on. Now, there were 3 projects that, to me, were significant. Besides just doing paving and walling of drains, which was traditional at that time. The person who taught me at the university, that is Dr. Phelps, he was in the Ministry of Works before, and all the whole drainage approach with respect to the Marval River, the Diego Martin River, the St. Anne's River, all those were already determined. So you found that the designs just had to be continued, and the construction had to continue in the form that was done there. Now, three challenges we had. We had a situation where you had a problem with the Fernandez waste going into the swamp and destroying the conditions of the swamp there, and a lot of the sea life and so was going to be destroyed, right? And this was started by Elton White. Good, but he died. He was running the soils department at the Ministry of Works prior to Commission, I think, and eventually went over to the drainage section. I know that the ministry wanted me to be under Majid Ibrahim, and I chose to go instead under that Taylor at that particular point in time. I was also fascinated by hydraulics. Although when I was at school, I was fascinated by the aqueducts and the form and shape of the aqueducts and things like that. But I was also fascinated by hydraulics. Okay, now, in order to solve that problem, what Elton did, and I did the construction, I worked with him on the designs also, and I was in charge of the construction at the time. Because of what we knew with respect to mangrove, and once that mangrove was below the level of the level at which you have oxygen exchange, right? Then the mangrove could last forever, more or less, right? We had a problem with vehicles being dumped all over the place. Since then, yes. Therefore, the question of what they used was mangrove piles, and the old vehicles, we collected them from all over the place. Make sure that they were down a certain level, because where you couldn't get the oxygen exchange going on, right? And a dam was built. So the dam was built using the mangrove that we saw there, plus bringing in vehicles from all over the country wherever we could get them, derelict vehicles, and strapping them together and making sure, and then filling the whole area with brought some fill the area and created a dam. And that prevented the influx of the what I will call the waste materials
from on the top, then
went out. Yes, that is basically what happened there, more or less. So I think it is the Black River in which that was done. I think it was the Black River. That I consider to be a very exciting project, because in other words, using indigenous things, using your imagination as such. Right? The second one is one that I did by myself. That is, we had serious coastal erosion problems, and at that time, Gabion baskets and Gabion mattresses were very much in vogue. But whereas the Gabion baskets worked very well on retaining walls and so, you find that the Gabion mattresses didn't work that well, because people used to walk on the mattresses, and therefore the protective mechanism was broken. Now, once that mechanism was broken, then under that is steel, and therefore corrosion will take place, and that's the end of the mattresses. And we developed an approach of one, creating the mattresses out of normal mesh that you find here, and using different coatings using the lake asphalt, right, by the sea. I mean, the other method that was being used at that time, not the other method, the method for protection of the mattresses from erosion was well known. What we used was drums filled with a mixture of the sand and the cement down there, and that provided the toe for what was required. Now, the first one that was done was Losiro. And I think you can still go there and see the Losiro mattresses and in space. In fact, Compton Dean, who is the engineer that is involved in the whole question of coastal erosion, did some work on that and commented on those mattresses in his work and such. Compton is no longer alive, but I got very close to Compton. He was also chairman of the board of the construction firm in Trinidad Limited. Right? There is an interesting issue as to how those fellows, how he got into coastal engineering, and how people like Imbert as well as Phelps got their doctorates. You had a problem at the university where Selvanagam was in charge of the engineering department at the time. And the whole question of what you could call publishing was an issue. And Selvanagam piled on the pressure on the whole university, all university engineers at the time who were to publish. And what happened is two of them went and took their postgraduate degrees and got their doctorates, that is Dr. Phelps, as well as Imbert. What happened then was that Compton Dean went and did research work in coastal engineering, and because he had already done work on his own going around the Caribbean and became the father of coastal engineering in the Caribbean. A lot of his work is published, and his work is now basic work for almost all coastal engineers now in Trinidad. I think the chaps in Jamaica are the ones who have most of this work now. The third one had to do with a very difficult drain at Deboulay. Now you had a Astra school that was functioning well, and you had a very small drain. That whole area was sand. And the school, say floor level, and the drain was supposed to come out was roughly at the same level. But the outfall was about 30 meters deeper and way down to the sea. That small drain excavated, caused an erosion, right, in an area of which the width of it was about 100 meters and the depth was at 30 meters. So you had this big chasm inside there, only sand, and the school was under threat. The big question then was, how could you get the drain down from the top there to the outfall to prevent further erosion? Now, it's not only erosion by water. What you also had, that if wind came, you just got big blocks of sand just fell down, right? And that was challenging because we bought one of our biggest track excavators here. At that time, the Ministry of Works used to have the biggest equipment in the island, right? It was all done and serviced at St. Joseph. You know, you had a section there, right? So we had that crane. It was a question of making sure that the crane in all its movement did not disturb, because it was near the end, there's a total precipice there, and therefore the crane operators had to be superb. And slowly what we did is build a series of terraces down there using the same question of the same steel drums, and so until we got the drain down. That was tricky, right? Very tricky. You couldn't leave that site until everything was clearly protected, because rain will be falling the next day. You don't know what's going to happen. So you used to leave that site 8-9 o'clock in the night, right? Come back first thing in the morning, and that went on for about 2-3 months until you got that done. We hear a lot about what I will call about the inefficiency of the civil service. I never met that. That's the first thing. I met a series of people who were there as foremen and inspectors and things like that, who were dedicated to whatever they had to do. They were absolutely dedicated. You didn't. If you wanted them to do something and you want them to come out in the night, they came out. Right? So that the question of people not doing their work at that point in time was never on. Right? So these things to me are very new, and not only that, but they were all interested in training and getting better. It's difficult for me to have regrets. I'll tell you why. I subscribe to a philosophy that you must not be wedded to ends. Okay? You must not be wedded to ends. You have to do your utmost, but you must not be wedded to ends. If the ends come by you doing your utmost, then great. If, however, your lack of doing your utmost is what caused the ends not to come, then regret comes in. Right? Okay. And I will say that I don't think I have had regrets in that sense. I've had disappointments, but the disappointment that I've had occurred on a job that I considered to be the most challenging job I will have ever been in. And because of a change of government in Dominica, the job did not go through. But to say that I've had regrets in all that I'm doing, no, I haven't had. That's the nature of the territory. I mean, if you don't understand the territory you're in and believe it is some idealistic thing, you have a problem, right? The nature of the territory. If you go to war, the nature of the territory is that you're going to be shot. You could be shot. You mightn't come back out. The nature of the territory here is that anything you do in engineering or advocacy for engineering, you're affecting people.